All right, so as I said, we are talking about relationships today. But more than anything, we're actually talking about something that's a little uncomfortable to talk about sometimes. And that's really how we can get ourselves right, how we can handle our bodies the best way and honor God with our bodies when it comes to relationships. Now, some of you guys might be in a place where you're like, hey man, I'm not even allowed to date. I look at girls and I think they're gross. I look at dudes and I'm like, I don't think that, right? They all act like second graders. Any ladies think that, right? Yeah? If that's you, just keep thinking that for a few more years, and we're doing, right? Because it's probably true. They probably, yeah. So anyways, that's a real thing. You might be looking at this and you might be like, man, this idea of dating and relationships and even holding hands or potentially kissing down the road, it seems weird, it seems uncomfortable. I don't know. If that's you, that's good. Honestly, the longer that you guys put off this idea of dating relationships, the better we think you'll be for it. Now, with that being said, I feel like sometimes some people kind of think like relationships, like, oh man, the church thinks that's a bad thing. Or even when it comes to sex, it's like, hey, sex is a bad thing. I think a lot of people's minds start to go there. But the truth is, that is not true. It couldn't really be farther from out. It's not that any of these are bad things. The truth is, like, dating and relationships and even sex, that's all really good stuff. But it has to be done properly. For instance, dating and relationships, you got to get it right. But then too, this idea of sex, it's meant for a very specific purpose, and that's marriage. And so over and over and over again, you see the world get this wrong, and they start to step into this stuff a little too early, a little too young, before they're ready, before they're married. And because of that, it makes it a little uncomfortable. It makes it difficult. And you see people broken over this more than really about any other topic. And that's why it's so uncomfortable to talk about. But as we said, man, we are a real church, and we're going to be real. And I want to be real with you guys, and our youth leaders want to be real. And the truth is, too, more than anything, some of the biggest regrets that really any adult has in life is when they get this area wrong. So we want to be real with you. We want to be a safe place where you can ask questions. And two, we want to be a group of people that rises up and they say, you know what, man, I know that a lot of peers my age are doing this wrong. I know a lot of people are making mistakes that should be fairly easily avoidable. I want to be different than that. I want to rise above that. And today we're going to talk about how we can do that. And how we can be a little different than the rest of the world. Because let's be honest, the rest of the world kind of stinks at this sometimes, right? But I want you guys to know you can be different. And God is on your side, and He's going to help you to be different. And two, man, you can stay away from this stuff. And He's there to help you, and we are as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and look at this first piece of scripture here. This is 1 Corinthians 6:18. And it says this. It says, flee from sexual immorality. Everybody say flee.
Flee.
What's it mean to flee?
Get out of there.
So I just thought about this. Anyone like scared of bees? Anyone again? How about wasps? Anyone? Wasps are like bees on steroids. They come straight from the devil, right? And I'm allergic to them, so they literally want to kill me, right? So if I'm not here some Sunday, it's probably good. No, I'm just playing. Yeah, no. So anyways, hey, if you see like a beehive and you're hanging out with your buddy little Johnny, and he throws a rock at the beehive, and all of a sudden those bees are ticked, what are you probably gonna do? You're going to run for your life. You're going to flee, right? So that's what it says here. It says this idea. It says flee. We all said that together, flee. And then it says all other sins a person commits. What's a sin? Man, it's really any time in life that God had like a goal for us, a good goal, a good thing for us, and we went somewhere else with that. Right? It's really any time that God had something good in mind for us and we took a different route. It says all other sins a person commits are outside of the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. So right here, you got 1 Corinthians, and they're talking about this idea, and it's like, obviously, I think we kind of know that a sin is not really a good thing, right? It's like, we made a mistake, we did something wrong, we can do a little better. And he says this, he's like, hey, this sin, specifically when it comes to sexual stuff, is even a little worse. Because you're really doing that to yourself. Paul's like, hey, it hits a little different. It stings a little more. And that's why you see so many people like broken over this idea of past mistakes they made when it comes to how they handle their bodies. And the unfortunate thing about this is the world teaches us everything wrong when it comes to dating, relationships, and even sex, right? They do a horrible job. Like, what outlets do we look at? We look at like TikTok, we look at like YouTube. I like TikTok. You guys like some of TikTok, yeah. And you get this idea where it's almost like every video you watch on TikTok, or at least 10 or 20% of them, it's like there's something there that has like a sexual undertone that's just not right. Or you see like girls or even guys who are posting pictures on Instagram or social media to try and get likes, and in that they're kind of degrading themselves a little bit. Or even on top of that, there's a term where once again we said we were going to be real, where it's almost a thing when you get on social media or you get on TikTok, they talk about this idea of like how many people they've actually been with in like a romantic and a sexual way, and they even call it like a body count. Like, that's a real thing. Like, that idea of, hey, that person that I was with in an intimate way, that's just a number. That's just an object. And man, I hope that this is a little sad. Because it really isn't. And you look at this, and it just leaves so many people brokenhearted and hurting. And they're like, I just kind of see myself as a number. I just kind of see myself as an object. But I want you guys to know, man, we can do a better job than this. You can do a better job. I can do a better job. We can be better. We can rise above that, even though we've got a terrible example of how to get it done. So with that, what's the right way to handle this? How do we get this right? Specifically we want to prepare you guys for the future. That's really one of our biggest jobs here. We want to teach you about Jesus. We want to prepare you for the future. When you get into relationships down the road in the future, how can you be different? How can you not fall into that same stuff? And I would say healthy boundaries are such a big part of this. If we want to be different, we have to have healthy boundaries. Everybody say boundary. Boundary. I want to show you what I mean when I say boundary. So, when you guys get into driving is awesome. You see these things on the road here. Anyone know what that is?
It's a boundary.
It's a boundary, yeah. More specifically, anyone know what it's called?
Guardrail.
Guardrail, yeah. Tim Berry. Just walking wisdom right there. What's the guardrail's purpose?
To keep you from going completely off the road.
For sure. Hey, a small little summer camp, when we go to summer camp and you get to see the beautiful Smoky Mountains, you'll see guardrails on the side of that mountain. What's the guardrail do? The guardrail means if you get in an accident, if you go off the road, you're going to hit the guardrail, but you're going to live, right? You're not falling off the mountain. That's what guardrails are there for. So when it comes to this idea of relationships, if you want to get relationships right, if you want to get this idea of like handling your body in a healthy way right, you need to have healthy boundaries. I'm going to talk to you about what a boundary looks like. So boundaries are a few different things. A boundary is like, if you're in a relationship down the road, and you're like, hey, here's the deal. We need to have a set conversation of what we're both comfortable with. It's very important whenever you're in a relationship, both people are comfortable, especially when you start to get into the physical side of a relationship. And I just want to pause there for a second. The slower you take the physical side of the relationship, the better off you'll be. Man, I know this from firsthand. Because the truth is, like Jayla and I were lucky enough to be like a small exception to like, hey, we dated when we were young, and we were able to like end up together, and we'll be married in just a couple months. But with that, yeah, it's like, oh yeah. But with that, man, I will say this. We've been together like 5 years. That's a pretty long time, right? And with that, if you guys started dating someone now, just for you to be a freshman or a sophomore in college, right around the age of about 20, because that's probably about the soonest you want to get married, right? That's pretty young. You would have to be together with someone for 6, 7, 8 years. That's a long time, right? And one thing we discovered is the longer we were in this relationship together, the harder it got to kind of keep these boundaries a thing, right? And in the same way too, if you guys are going to date someone for 8 years, it gets even harder. If you're going to date someone it gets even harder. The slower you take this physical side of a relationship, the better. So you need healthy boundaries. So what's a boundary? If you guys both agree, hey, a few years down the road, we start dating, but I don't really want to go too far physically, so I'm only comfortable with holding hands. Then all of a sudden, if you hold hands and you get a warm, fuzzy feeling, and you're like, you know what? I kind of want to do more than hold hands. Then you're like, no, we said we're only going to hold hands. So you hit a boundary, and you stop it. Now, what if you said all we're going to do is kiss? That's the farthest we're going to go. That's if you get in a place and it gets a little hot and steamy, and then you're like, oh, hot and steamy, right? It'll happen, right? And then you get to a point, your boundary is, hey, we said we were only going to kiss, we stop there. Healthy boundary. Does that make sense? That idea of a healthy boundary, so important. Or maybe you're at a place where, another thing we're going to talk about is this idea of, like, kind of looking at things on the internet, that we kind of know is not good for us. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. Why? Because it's a struggle. So specifically with that, it's like pornography is a big deal. And why do we talk about it here? Because that's a weird word. It's because myself, it's like I've been a Christian for pretty much my whole life. When did I start to wrestle with this? 6th grade, right? So that's a real thing. Man, I know firsthand that this is a struggle that young people have. What's the boundary with that? I'm not going to be on my phone in my room alone after 10 o'clock. I'm not going to be in a place where I have unlimited access to the computer with no one around me. That's a healthy boundary. Having physical boundaries in our relationships keep us safe. Man, a boundary is such an important thing. And then with that too, having healthy accountability. Having people who are there and order you leader. Maybe even your parents, but that can be weird at times. But for some people that works really well. Maybe even just order people down the road who you really respect. Man, have them be accountable. When you get into relationships down the road, go and talk to them. How are you really doing? How are you doing at healthy boundaries? How are you doing at having a healthy relationship? Such a big deal. We're going to wrap up here in just a moment, but I want to hit on this point again that we talked about a little earlier, and that's this. The slower that we take the physical side of a relationship, the better off we'll be. Man, I really believe that. There's all the time down the road to get into this. And then too, once you guys get married, because that's the goal, right? Once you all to be married, then man, you can take that physical side and it changes in a bit. But the slower you take it before then, the better off you'll be. We need healthy boundaries to do this. As we wrap up here, I want to take a second and just remind you guys this. I think we say this a lot, but we can never say it too much. We love you guys. We care about you. Why are we real with you? We don't like talking about this either. It's awkward, right? Why are we real with you? Because we care about you. Because we know this is a struggle. But two, not only do we care about you, not only do we love you, we know that you guys have worth. You have value. You matter to us, you matter to God. Even more important, you matter to God. You have value, you have worth. And this sexual side of our life is such a delicate and special and important piece of our life, and that matters. So I just challenge you, man, be willing to be a little different. Be willing to take this seriously. And if you do, God is going to do a work through that. But with that, man, we're going to talk about a few different ways that we see young people start to devalue themselves, which once again, this is things that a lot of our youth leaders have wrestled with. This is things that I've wrestled with. This idea. So there's a couple of things I just want to hit on that are real things here before we wrap up. The first one is this. This is something that is becoming more and more really a sad part that we see culture do. People getting in a relationship, and then it's usually a girl, but it doesn't have to be a girl. You start sending like inappropriate pictures of yourself because you think that's going to make someone think higher of you. Man, I just want to say, first off, if that's you, man, it's okay. There's definitely grace for that, isn't it? But man, if you ever get in a relationship with someone, or you see a dude and he asks for something like that, or you think that's something that would make him happy, let me just say, they're not good enough for you. You are better than that. You are worth more than that. You don't have to devalue yourself in that way. Now, once again, if you wrestle with that, man, you're okay, you're fine. You're still precious. God still loves you. We still live. But you are worth more than that. You don't have to do that. Another thing, if you ever get in a relationship and anyone tries to pressure you physically, you are worth more than that. That person's not good enough for you. You deserve more. And then to this topic of like pornography, looking at things on the internet that are inappropriate. A lot of people think this is just a guy problem, but it's not. A lot of dudes wrestle with this, and I would say this, 99.9% of dudes wrestle with this at some point in your life. I would bet the farm right now, there's not a single like male youth leader in here, and probably not a lot of female youth leaders in here who have not wrestled with this problem at some point in your life, man. And we're here to help you through it, but I just want to say, if you've never like stumbled across anything like that, for you, stay away would be my advice. Because that's a dark trap that you don't want to be a part of. And it only gets harder from there, it only gets deeper from there. But then too, if you're in a place where you've already started to wrestle with this stuff, maybe you're in a place where you already felt a little addicted to this, I want you to know, there's hope, man. And you can climb out of that hole, and we are here for you and help you. And I know that because so many men have wrestled with that, and there's been hope because of that. That's been my story as well. There is hope for you. Remember your guys' value. I want to end with this point here. Your past doesn't define you. So many people make mistakes when it comes to dating, relationship, or sex. And whether you're in a place here where you've already made some of those mistakes or you haven't, let me just tell you, you're going to make some mistakes. right? Now, the game plan is for us to make as few as possible, right? But we're all going to screw up. We're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes every single day, right? We're all going to make mistakes. That doesn't define you. Your past doesn't define you. Your mistakes don't define you. What defines you is what God says about you. And what does God say about you when you make mistakes? Throw that up there for us, B. It says this. He says this. A lot of times people start to find their identity in what they did, the mistakes that they made, but this is what God says. He says, though your skins are like scarlet, scarlet's like buckeye red, right? That bright, dark color red. Though your skins are red, like as red can be, though it's like, yeah, that's a stain and God sees that. That's a mistake. That's a bad thing. They shall be white as snow. What does that mean? It means saying, God sees all of our mistakes and He's like, yeah, that's a mistake. That's red. I see that. But then when you step into a relationship with Him, He forgives that. No longer does He see any red within you. Instead, He's like, you know what? You are washed white as snow. You are pure as snow. You are precious. You are loved. You are valued. And you have value. Never forget that. Everybody say this. Go ahead and look at your neighbor and say, you have value. And then look at your other neighbor who you didn't want to look at and say, so do you. You also have value. Man, stay with me as we wrap up here. Once again, this is such a tough topic. Man, if there was anything I wanted you guys to know from this, it's that, hey, regardless of the mistakes you make in this area, God still loves you, we love you. Neither of us see you any different. Man, we're so glad you're here. The next one is this. You can be different. The world is jacked up in this subject and in so many other subjects, but you can be different. Your schools get this wrong in so many, but you can be different. And the third one is this. We are here to be here for you and to help you through it because we've been through it. Right? Such a big thing. We're going to talk more about this in our small groups, and you guys will have some time to ask questions. First, let's get into prayer together. God,